Hello everyone, I'm Simone, tech specialist from Kiloview. Thank you to have joined me into this new webinar. Today we are gonna have a look on the all Kiloview lineup products. We're gonna have some example of how to translate your baseband production to IP workflow. This is a really kind of friendly webinar. I want you to collect all your questions and information on the setup you might have to run on your production, so we can talk about later in the Q&A section. So no further hesitation, grab yourself a cup of coffee and join me into this webinar. Let's have a look on today's agenda. Alright, we're gonna take a look on the Kiloview ecosystem, all our products, and of course some user scenarios and example. And at the end we're gonna have the Q&A section. As I remember before, just try to collect your information about the setup you have to run. If you have some doubt, maybe on the product you have to choose, I'll try to answer all your questions at the end of this webinar. You will have seen this slide so many times with Kiloview. We are a company that embrace both the IP workflow and the baseband one, have hardware solution and software solution to merge all your needs in a modern production. So this is a kind of our workflow in terms of application, whether you work into live situation, on-prem, or on the cloud, or wherever in the studio. We do have products that support you the transition to IP workflow easily, no matter you are working on a local area network or you're working over IP through internet. Let's start with the NDI series. All the products you see in here, like the N60, the N50, the N1, and so on, are basically encoding and decoding NDI or NDI-HX feed back and forth between baseband with low latency IP workflow. You know, the main usage of those products is for distribution over live application encoding and decoding, where latency is a critical thing. So these are your companion to run your modern production over IP without taking the hands on lots of hardware like baseband solution you have done till now. We have the IP encoder series like the E3, the E1, the E2, the S2 that actually allows you to encoding baseband signals such as HDMI or SDI to IP stream solution. So this is your perfect companion whether you want to cross the internet and have your signal be distributed to social media platforms such as YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, you name it, and also to reach a remote location such as a remote studio, for example. And you can of course connect your audience everywhere in the world with this kind of encoders. There's our bonding encoder series, which are basically based on the same encoder technology of our wired one, but add the possibility to bonding the connection. So we have our server, which is the Kilolink server, allows you to basically bond multiple connection and be reliable on your transmission wherever you are, no matter you're running on over battery, of course, or mobile networking. This is our solution to run video feeds outside from and to remote production venue. The IP decoder series, of course, is the opposite side of the encoder, so it decodes stream feed back to baseband. And this is, of course, being intended to use over the public internet, even if you can use with some protocols over the LAN. And this can feed, of course, your video mixer console, your monitors, projectors, and LED walls. Then we have our IP gateway series. The IP gateway basically is resemble what decoder series does, but has this nice feature which is the transcoding. So you can transcode different kind of codecs into something else. Let's pretend we have SRT or RTMP. We can then transcode those to NDI-HX or HLS, for example, or use this as an RTMP server. We're gonna have a look at the end of this webinar to some practical example. Of course, for the most demanding broadcaster, we have the Cradle Rack series, which is mainly aimed for fixed application. And wherever you have a cable management that should be perfect, this is absolutely your go-to product, because everything we have as a box series, we also have as a Cradle card series. So for an easier setup, whatever there's a fixed installation or, for example, OB-WAN stuff, you can use the Cradle Rack series. There's also our new Cube series with the R1 and the X1. So you will be able to record NDI and NDI-HX video feeds with the R1 and actually have some sort of switching capabilities as you used with the SDI switcher, but over NDI and NDI-HX with the X1, which is running sort of the NDI core software solution we have also as a software bundle separately. There's the Link Deck series, which are our surface board for the Multiview Pro software, and this platform is supposed to be enabled supporting all the software from the Kiloview lineup and gives all the control at your fingertips, no matter you're working with the intercom system, with the Multiview Pro or the NDI core. You can bring them all together in a super and easy setup hardware solution controller. Of course, Kiloview runs a lot of software that can be used on the cloud or on-premise, like the Killink, the Multiview Pro, the Kiloview Intercom Server Pro, the NDI Core, and the NDI Recorder. All our software are mainly based on Linux, so they can be deployed onto Docker containers, onto different operating systems such as Windows, macOS, and Linux, of course. And some other applications are Windows and macOS based for a more user-friendly web UI interface. These are pretty much the video format and codecs Kiloview used for their encoders and decoders. As I said before, we have the NDI and NDI-HX, which is more for the local area network. And then we have things like SRT, MPEG-TS, HLS, RTMP, and RTSP to cross the public internet. NDI main workflow, of course, as NDI-HX, which is its companion in the compressed way of H.264 and H.265, is intended to be used as a low latency codec to convert baseband signal to IP workflow. This will reduce, of course, your setup time and increasing flexibility and interoperability between different ecosystems. So if you have a baseband solution, you can bring it NDI into the game without much of a complexity, but actually bring so much flexibility in your setup with this kind of workflow. Then, of course, we have the public internet workflow with SRT, RTMP, HLS, and all the other codecs. This will be able to send and receive your signal across the whole world, from social media to crossing the globe, establishing P2P connection between different venues. If you have remote production or everything that concerns point A to point B connection, this is absolutely the codec you are gonna use. Let's have a look on setup, workflow, and some example right now. You can use our N series as encoder. Whether you use our new series N60, N50, N5 or N6 or our legacy series like the N1, N2, N3, N4 and so on, you can send your camera or your laptop or also your console video feed in NDI or NDI-HX to software like vMix, Vector Plus, OBS, Wirecast and many more. So wherever you want to encode into NDI or NDI-HX, you can send this through different software and also to baseband mixer solutions such as Blackmagic Items or ROS or whatever other brand you are using to do it so. Of course, N-Series can also be used as a decoder, so wherever it's NDI or NDI-HX coming from your softwares, you can transcode this back to HDMI or SDI in order to feed your video walls, your LED walls, or your projectors and monitors easily. This is a kind of example on how you put NDI and our Kiloview products into live production. So we are pretending we have some cameras with every camera has one encoder that being sent it to a switch, and then we connect point to point one switch to another switch where we have other decoders or our Cradle series. In this way we can actually merge together baseband and NDI workflow to have software plus hardware interoperability, whether we use of course software solution or hardware based mixers. This compared to baseband, of course, can cover longer distances and have a lower time setup with offering max flexibility of working over IP, and of course can be expanded over time easily. This is another small example of running the same kind of setup on a studio. Maybe you have some static camera or EFP cameras and you have a pre-existing network infrastructure, so you don't have to pass other cable into your venue, but you can use your existing infrastructure and set up the workflow for NDI. So just adding the encoders and maybe use your software of choose like vMix, OBS, Wirecast and all the other software that enables NDI as an ingest source, or your mixer with other encoders and decoders. Of course, the same setup can be applied to multiple usage scenarios, whether you have house of worship, educational, surveillance system, concerts, sports event, new studios, you name it. Kiloview is able to basically embrace the IP workflow and put it into every task you might need for your production. Talking about the IP encoders, of course, like the E3 in this slide, we can cross the public internet to go to our social media platforms such as Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Instagram, and so on. And of course, we can also use these encoders with something like OB-WAN or a studio, send the signal to a remote studio where we place a Kiloview decoder. This is essential for point A to point B connection. And we can of course also bring into the game something like a full remote production, whether we use just cable solution like the E3, the E1, the E2, or maybe our P series. So we can use the power of bonding connection to run a complete show everywhere in the world, wherever there's a computer. And this is really awesome because we shrink it down our production and of course lowering down the budget for the workloads we have. From the decoder side, of course, we can see in these slides, we have a bunch of cameras crossing the internet with protocols such as RTMP, SRT, and so on. And to the other side, we have our decoders. those decoders can bring back those IP flows and convert back to baseband. So it doesn't matter whether you want to use a software solution or mixing hardware console, you can basically transcode those SRT or RTMP feed back to baseband easily. Of course, for a more rugged and kind of professional broadcasting, you might use our Cradle series, whether you're using OV vans or your main task is to set up everything in a studio. So in this small example, I want to show that maybe you have just two cameras and a remote commentary. So you might want to have a small production, but you still need to lower all the heavy equipment on the hardware. So you might want to run the entire production over a laptop. And this is why the gateway is in the slide. So you can basically take the SRT or RTMP feed, for example, and transcode those with the media gateway. So the media gateway gives you the possibility to get those signals, for example, into NDI-HX. So the media gateway takes all the hardware encoding and transcoding for the signals themselves and then convert into a format that it's suitable also for smaller kind of production hardware system. A really good example of this kind of a setup is the Formula X Racing Weekend, which I want to show you as a case history we have worked. So the guys basically needs to have a solution to kind of have this remote hybrid production. And this is a short video of the setup we have done. So basically the team has the need to reduce the preparation time in every race circuit they have to perform those broadcasts. So they moved from a point-to-point mesh Wi-Fi system that took almost 2 days of setup preparation to a complete remote Kiloview 4G solution with a P1 and P2 bonding encoders. So we bring the P series into the game, and choosing this product, of course, we were able to do a sort of hybrid solution and of course shrink it down the times for the rehearsal that have been done in few hours instead of days. And the fact that the unit can be powered by standard batteries like Velox and so on, USB, you have the possibility to not even run power to every camera operator spot. This is just a few pictures of what we have done during the race competition. We basically has all the encoders throughout the race circuits. The encoders get back to the studio, which were side to the hand of the race circuit. And we also have an OB van with a LED wall outside the venue. This is the real small diagram of what we had to perform. So we have those cameras sending the feeds to Kilolink, and with the usage of the Kilolink intercom server, we were able to talk with the camera operator wherever we have some problems or we have to change the shots. All the camera operator can know wherever they are in program or in preview, for example. Then we send the SRT back to the venue where we have the two MG300s. Those media gateway allows us to bring back those SRT feed into NDI-HX, allowing us to not have any hardware solution to get our signal back into our vMix system. And this shrinks down a lot the setup, and it's an easy to use solution and kind of example on how you can put Kiloview into your setup and have some remote production involving. This is another example. I've run a production for 2 years of the Junior Grand Prix series, and we do actually everything within NDI solution. This is the short list of what we have used. So we have a full NDI production setup with a Vector Plus and a replay system, the 3-play, some cameras within other PTZ camera from Beauty and Kiss and Cry shots, and we use the Kiloview M5 encoders and some D350 to have LED dual feed and some others N5 to return our program back to all the judges or all the productions that needs the program back to their spots. We have 5 switches around the ice ring to connect everything through fiber. Of course, doing this kind of setups, we move from an OB-van production, which is massively and of course needs a lot of technician to work on it, to NDI workflow with far less technician involved and easier setup with faster preparation timing using fiber, Ethernet cables, and of course this allows us to move the equipment through the different venue across multiple countries by flight. In 2 months we almost cover 50,000 kilometers and reducing of course CO2 emission and traveling costs. This kind of setups allows you to shrink it down all your production with the power of NDI, and of course we have to stream those production within E3 and maybe receive on the remote venue within D350. This seems really complex, but actually we been helped a lot with this NDI workflow. These are a few of the Kiloview bundle you might have to use in your production. For example, right here we have an N60 plus an N60, so whether we want to encode some baseband signal to NDI or NDI-HX and bring it back to baseband again, we can use those in combination, one as an encoder and one as a decoder. And of course we can also mix and match the encode series with the decode series, such as the second example with the D350, or as in the third example we can have N60 with the Cradle series whether fixed installation are involved. Of course, the same thing will happen with the over IP solution, so we can bring it like the E3 with the D350 or the P series, whether bonding solution are needed or remote production, and go back to our decoder series. And we can of course mix and match both the wired and the bonding solution to the Cradle series. This is more onto the remote production way, where we have like bonding bell packs, our P series gets back to our Cradle series in the remote studio, or we can merge together 2 different studios with a Cradle rack unit series. Let's now have a look on the web UI example of the setup between encoders and decoders and what they can do for you. Alright, this is the vMix instance I'm running for this webinar, and I want to show you some connection between N50, N60, E3 and the MG300V2 I'm using right now, so I can reproduce the example I've done in the slide. In this, I want just firstly to show you the outputs of this production. You can see we have the output number 1, output in NDI, and also output number 3 with the fourth input, which is actually this test pattern right here, and the fourth one, which is actually act as a recorder for both the webinar and the screencast. So let me open the browser right now. You see I'm using the external output, and here's the N50. I'm taking the SDI signal output from vMix to here, and you will see we have both the NDI HX and NDI high bandwidth encoded signal. Here there's the N60, the E3, and the MG300V2. Let me do this setup. We're gonna use the input of the N50 to feed the N60 as NDI over NDI. Right here, I can show you into vMix. I have the reentry of the N60, which is taking actually the full NDI feed from the N50. We can also change it right now. For example, I can use this output from vMix and send the test pattern. So if we open the reentry, you see this test pattern right here from the output of vMix. And of course, we can also use the NDI HX from the N50. So we have a full NDI over NDI interoperability in between these products right here. Let me now show you the connection with the MG300, for example. Right here, let me close this. Let's do from the really beginning. If I go into this Discover tab, I can take the NDI HX from the M50, because MG300V2 doesn't support full NDI but only NDI HX. And I can take this NDI HX feed, for example, and after I've selected HDMI, I can bring it into here and output through the HDMI one. You can see here the re-entry of the MG300. So here we have the output of the MG300, which is cool because we can also create compositions like dual windows setup like this. We can actually maybe, let's say, add a background. Okay, and if we come back to vMix, you see, there you go. We have this dual windows setup. Of course, we can revert this and so on. Let me do also this one with SRT. So we have seen basically we are able to use NDI and NDI HX throughout our products line. If now I enter the E3, which is taking the loop out of the N50 actually, I want to send an SRT to the cloud, which is this SRT I've created right here. So I'm sending into a recast SRT server I got into the cloud, and I want to grab onto the MG300. All right, so I'm start streaming from here, and let's go into the MG300, select SRT caller, let's give it a name, and insert all the data for it. In my specific case, I'm going to use also the stream ID. Okay, I've created the SRT feed, and now, of course, I can decode this SRT feed directly into the MG300. And here's the feed coming from the E3 going into the cloud to the MG300. And as you can see, into vMix, I'm taking the HDMI out with, of course, a little bit of latency because it's doing a lot of travel right now. But the cool thing is that actually we can transcode with the MG300, as I said before. So let we try to add a transcode feed on the MG300. Let's pretend we don't want the HDMI, but we rather want the NDI-HX. So we're going to select the SRT feed, which is coming as an ingest into the MG300, and into service, I'm going to select NDI-HX, and I'm going to give it a name like SRT, and here we go. Now we are transcoding SRT to NDI-HX. If we go and open the NDI tools and open the studio monitor, you will see if we select the MG300 V2 and the transcoded channel, here we go. We have the output SRT to NDI-HX, and of course we can re-import this into vMix, for example. So if I open vMix right now, you see we have the SRT to HDMI output, but we can go into the NDI and select our transcoded signal right now. You see, so we have both the SRT feed over HDMI and the, of course, NDI-HX. I want to give you a little anticipation on the E3 actually, because I'm running the demo version, which is allow you to have multi-channel audio. So I want to show you this. For example, let's pretend we want to send an SRT feed to vMix. Are we going to use also the MG300 if we want to? So here in the settings, I've selected audio stereo, which I've created right here on the right side, and send it onto the cloud. Here on the three dots on the audio, this new firmware will allows you actually to have multiple channels. As you can see here, I've selected quad channels into this quad setup, and we can also remap the channels. And into the first one, I've selected stereo. But let's go easy for this one. Let's open the channel right now, and let's add this to vMix. I'm gonna put the test pattern onto the program. You will see here the F and G bus on vMix are actually have audio, because as we open the test pattern, you will see we have 4 channels of audio that are totally independent. If I lower down the first channel, you will see on the F, the left channel is gone, and the third one on the G, exactly the same. And at this moment, I'm just sending this through bus F and G, and I'm sending actually the external output to F and G only. So let's now grab that SRT feed into vMix, for example. Here's the setting I have, and I can press OK. And onto the SRT, you see I have the test pattern right now. If we open the audio channel and the channel mixer, you will see we have only 2 channels, because now I'm just sending the 2 channels. But let me be back on the E3 interface, and this time, instead of the stereo setting, let's go with a quad one. With this quad one, I'm selecting this, and you can check it out into this second setting. We have selected 4 channels. So actually we are receiving 4 channels through SDI, and we can encode those 4 channels back to vMix. If I reset this input right now and we open back the audio tab from the input, here you go. You have 4 channels right now. So the cool thing is, if I take the multi-channel test pattern here, you can see how those channels relate in between what is sent to what has been decoded. This firmware will be available really soon, I think at the end of December. So I really hope you like this part of the video, and see you for the Q&A section. Alright, that's it for this webinar, and I hope you have collected all your setup and all your doubts about what you have to use, and maybe some questions about what product is more indicated for your production. So let me be back on the screen. So hello guys, and thank you to have joined this webinar. I just collect some of your questions. Let's see. We have a question from 3Cube asking if there's some plan to DVB compatible encoder that provides DVB streams like SRT or UDP. Actually, at the moment, we're not planning to do something like that, but it could be a good idea, and I think we can pass this information to the R&D and process developing to see if we can do something like that. Really interesting, by the way. Also, remote WebRTC call for remote live view. I think this can be added as, you know, with the NDI remote feature from the NDI tools. We might have some hardware solution compatible to do something like that in the near future. Let me see. Okay, we have a question. Well, will all the server be joined into a single that does comms, bonding, and management? Of course, our server solution have been based over Docker containers. So actually, the cool thing about Docker containers is that, of course, you have a light environment system, and you can install multiple containers on the same virtual machine, whether you use on-prem or on the cloud. So the idea overall is to release the Kiloview Kilolink Pro server that will match all these requests. For first part, we're gonna be able to have the management and the streaming server, which will not serve only for the P series, but also for the other encoder series like the E3. So we will probably have some update after this ICE 2024. And we will be able to use, of course, the P3 and all the other products. So you will merge management and also the streaming platform directly from one only server. And we have here, okay, we are considering deploying several units of N6 or D260 as far as the same price and handle 1080p. What's the main difference in between those? Yeah, okay, N6 is more like I/O module, so you can use both as an encoder and decoder, and as part of the new lineup, will handle both NDI and NDI HX. D260 to the other side is more like a decoder to baseband solution, so it can act only as a decoder, but it can decode NDI HX as well. At the moment being, only the D350 can decode full NDI streams, but actually the D260 can decode other kind of protocols like SRT, RTMP, and whatever. So if you might intend to not just use NDI, D260 is probably the best choice for you. Okay. I'm trying to decide whether to purchase N5 or N50, and the primary job would be to decode NDI stream from vMix over NDI bridge to a local studio monitor. Do I have any latency difference in decoding the two? No, actually not, because wherever you're running the NDI bridge on the computer that makes the production, basically all the feed will be transcoded in NDI HX, and the VPN created in between the host and the client will be make sure you have the same kind of delay on entrance in the ingest signals for the NDI. So there will no kind of difference in latency. You might expect some sort of 2-frame of latency while decoding from Kiloview products, whether you use the 1080p or 4K version. Let's see what we have in here. Is it possible to have redundant bonding and management server? Yes, with the KiloLink Pro, we are designing actually one single server as a management one, but multiple streaming server inside of that Docker container. So you will have the possibility to run 2 instances of the streaming server, which will take care about the bonding and also will take care about the streaming platform. So whether your encoder will fail to connect to one of the streaming server hosted by the KiloLink Pro, the other can act as a redundant. And as I said, we will have some updates after IC this year in Barcelona. Let's see. We can add E3 to the management. Okay, yeah, E3 isn't being available to being added on the management server at the moment, and the next firmware I show you it should be enabled to be adapted to the management server and also have the multi-channel encoding solution. Let's see. Okay. For regarding the P1 connection, whether you can't access the locally in the network, you can still use the access point. For example, that a lot of customers are not aware about this, but actually the P series will spread an access point entry. You can access the local UI of the encoder directly from its access point, even via a web app on the phone, for example. Let's see if we have some other questions. If I have to choose capture stream in original format over R1, will the original H.264 will be transcoded into the new tech SpeedHQ? At the moment, R1 is able actually to record both NDI and NDI-HX feed. They will save as NDI feed, so full NDI on the SpeedHQ codec. And you will have, by the way, the possibility to record one single feed and transcode back to NDI, back to H.264 and H.265 if you need this. Otherwise, you will have up to 9 feed of 1080p recording and up to 4 feed of 4K recording. Some other question. We are considering to using the N40 and the expansion USB port to drive a small fan, 5-volt fan. Do we need some pre-configuration? No, actually the USB output from the N series will allow you to have power output at 5 volts without any problems. So this meaning you can have also like converters such as SDI or HDMI converters attached directly to the unit and convert whether you need HDMI to SDI and just power the unit within the N series. Let's see. I don't think I've missed something. I just would like to actually show you something else because I will forget it. Let me just stream my screen right now. I want to show you something that is really cool and I forgot, maybe can interest to some one of you that do multi-stream solution. For example, right here we have the E3 getting the signal from my main vMix output, and I can use SRT to output to the MG300, okay? We can actually use the streaming service to do some sort of RTMP recasting. So if you are familiar with software like, for example, Restream, you will be able to basically recast one single RTMP outside to multiple social media platform. And this is quite interesting because you can actually doing this with the MG300 with as many output source you need. For example, if I here select the SRT feed and I've chosen the service tab, we can create RTMP recasting directly to YouTube, just copying the URL, put it this slash and the streaming key. We actually have the possibility to doing with the Kiloview product without using a third-party plugin solution, for example. Okay, you will see in here I've started the live stream over YouTube, and basically you can do this with a within multiple platforms such as Facebook or Twitch, all simultaneously by running this kind of setup. So you can have like multiple RTMP outputs. So the gateway will act as both decoder as encoder for multi-recast RTMP stream. So let me be back on the screen and see if we have another question. We cannot. In the D350, there's a problem with gateway IP. In the network preferences, we cannot add the gateway IP info. I don't know about that. Probably it should be some problem with a firmware release. I would suggest you always drop an email to the support team at the end of this webinar. We can try to see what we can do about it. All right. Okay, guys, I think it's everything for today, and I really much appreciate your time spent with this webinar. And I hope you like it, and stay tuned for a new webinar to come on the next year. Some of you we will see at the ICE in Barcelona, and have a nice day. Bye.